Welcome to the Sunmall podcast, where we interview the stars of e-commerce.
Today's guest is Nano Stasiak, CEO of Impulso, a top agency who has clients such as Shakira.
But you've had a lot of really impressive clients, such as like Shakira and stuff like that. But maybe you can walk us through like how did you get started and build up in the initial phase.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on. Long story short, I started a clothing brand with a few close friends back at about 19 years old. Fast forward a few years and the hobby turned into a full out brand. So throughout university, we was fortunate enough to be able to have some extra time to grow this brand with a few friends. And after it got serious over a few years, finished up school, was able to go full time and really go full force. But after growing a successful direct to consumer brand online, after 7 years, I launched a digital media agency. Success of the brand really positioned myself to have a great network so that when I did pull away from from having my own brand to an agency, I had that network that allowed me to have that work right from the beginning and not necessarily take the years of building an agency and building that reputation. So the reputation was built over that 7.5 years of having a clothing brand.
That totally makes sense. Any kind of key differences you notice having your own brand and being in an agency, like the key differences that you've seen in your kind of day to day work?
Oh, I'd say there's many differences. Mainly, I think the speed of the work. So when you're on your own brand, it's really easy to come up with an idea, work with your team or just even yourself, and it goes into execution right away. Versus when you're an agency, someone has an idea, it gets taken internally, analyzed, thought of internally, and then shown to the client. And the client has to talk about it with us, talk about it internally, come back to us with feedback. So I'd say the speed of the work is a lot faster, a lot more agile on the brand side compared to the agency side where there's a little bit more steps in between.
That totally makes sense. So, are there any things you do at Impulse kind of try to mitigate that or try to make the process a little faster for you and your clients?
Yeah, the reason that we're called Impulso is because I'm Latin and the word Impulso means momentum in Latin language. So we really pride ourselves of what I say is like showing that all offense of, hey, we really approach our clients with doing X, Y, Z. This is how it should go down. This is what we could do for you, rather than being reactive and waiting for a client to come up with ideas or come up with initiatives. We really like to come forward, show that offense, and get things done that way rather than, like I said, be receptive to or be reactive to ideas on the client side.
That totally makes sense, right? If you're always waiting for the client, there might be some delays there. But if you do some work in house, present it to the client, you can be much more agile there. I
Totally.
think one thing you mentioned is part of your kind of your heritage. So I know that you've spent a lot of time in many different places. So has that kind of impact how you like come to e-commerce, like different perspectives you can bring and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think traveling really challenges you to adapt to change. And I'm a huge believer in backer of change and adaptation to change. So in the agency world with so many different parties, technology changing, there's always so much change that one needs to get used to. So having lived in many different countries, being challenged to adapt to different environments is something that I really think about and I stay mindful of in just day to day. So overcoming those challenges and figuring out how to overcome change and to adapt to change and change oneself is something that I learned through traveling, and I make sure to be mindful of it in the daily workplace.
That totally makes sense. That adaptability is really key. So now I wanted to really focus in on Impulso and specific strategies. So maybe you can just give like a quick background about Impulse or some clients you worked with, what you guys specialize in.
So Impulsive Media mostly focuses on scaling direct to consumer brands. Our brother, Ben Brother, is really coming to a brand and pouring gas on the already existing fire. Most of these brands are already on Shopify, perhaps already on Klaviyo, but they really haven't leveraged the technology that is available for them to scale. And that's when they use us. So we take these technologies that we've been using for years and years, and like I said, pour gas on the fire, use these technologies to scale the direct to consumer brands online. And this mainly comes through paid advertising on all your search and organic in your social channels, as well as a lot of retention marketing through email marketing and SMS. A lot of app work as well. So taking your Shopify stores and actually creating a mobile app with it. And really all the rollout of your campaigns, of your paid ads and your email marketing to really add some structure on the paid ad side of things for direct to consumer brands. So that's really what we're up to at Impulso, is working with direct to consumer brands on retainer, and I'm really responsible for their overall revenue from their direct to consumer channels.
Makes sense. So let's dig in there. So one thing you mentioned is you help them with app development. So maybe you can talk about what are some of the main benefits of having an app. What are some businesses it's good for, businesses it's not good to, or what are some like frameworks you use in developing it?
Yeah, in terms of the space that I'm in, and for shopping directly online, and you're really using the app as a shoppable conversion spot. It's really best used to build community and really create an offer for your VIPs, would be your app downloaders, and really have this space as an additional space for them to have exclusive content. So it's either behind the scenes or stories about what's really going on with the brands. But most importantly is first access to VIP sales, new releases, new products, and really using the app to make it a community building tool, not necessarily acquiring a first customer tool. So really launching an app is recommended for companies that have been around for at least 2, 3, 4, 5 years that already have the fan base, and they use it as a retention model to offer that exclusivity, right? It's definitely not a place that you're going to get new downloads. It'd be very rare to get a new app download for a fashion brand randomly, call it, right? So you really have to create an organic and paid strategy to drive downloads and give that feel to the user in terms of exclusivity. How can they get closer to your brand? And that's really what you use the app for.
That totally makes sense. So it's like if I'm a first time shopper, I'm not going to download an app. But if I'm a loyal user or VIP, I might download the app and keep viewing content behind the scenes. That makes sense. One of the things here is, do you guys take advantage? Sometimes people don't read emails, but if they have an app, you can send them notifications. So how do you guys? Is it more people come inbound to the app, or you send them notifications through the app, or how do you guys think through that?
Yeah, I think that's like a two-part question. The way you get downloads is figuring out your warm audience. Where does your warm audience live, and how can you communicate to them that they should download your app? And that's mainly going to come from your email and your SMS subscribers, right? These are the most loyal people. This is where they're living. So communicate to them through email and SMS, as well as your organic placements, just like your Instagram stories or your main feed placements, to drive downloads. And the second part of that question would be, how are push notifications utilized? So push notifications are utilized mainly for daily interactions. So an example would be a purpose-based, call it a mental health brand, where they would send a daily push notifications for, call it, positive affirmations or positive prompts, right? So that you're providing that value to your user base and helping them out in any sort of way. So those push notifications on daily basis usually are not to try to sell something. It's usually to create a connection with your audience and to build that loyalty. And then you would mix in product launches, or mix in, call it, shoppable push notifications that are more enticing to check out. So it's really recommended to have a good balance of these different types of messaging to ensure a balance across your social media, your communication from the app.
That totally makes sense. You don't always want every notification by this. So you want a good mix there. Like what kind of tools do you use? Do you build native apps? Do you use some higher level tools? Like how do you build these apps for
We have an agency partnership with with a business called Tapcart, and they essentially work with our team to develop an app based from your Shopify store. So it plugs into your Shopify store, and it creates a mobile shop based off your already existing desktop and mobile website.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, so apps are definitely a great channel. I think another channel you mentioned before that you guys specialize in is mobile messaging and texting. So any kind of framework you have around that?
Frameworks in terms of SMS, I'd say it's quite similar to your push notifications from your app. right? So you want to be quite selective in the number of SMSs that you push out, and you want to have a great balance in between your communications there, call it your pillars, right? So in between your product announcements and your salesy texts versus sales that text that you're trying to make someone laugh or you're trying to add value to their life, right? So pick your battles in SMS. The recommended cadence is about 4 to 8 SMSs a month max, depending on your on your business strategy.
Makes sense. Is there something you maybe do different on SMS versus the app? Something unique to SMS that you guys do there?
I'd say they're quite similar. They're really similar, to be honest. Sure, the very similar character length. If anything, we try to keep the push notifications a little bit even shorter, but they're quite very similar strategies across the board there. Through the push notifications in the app, you can already have some like preset settings. For example, let's say you click this push notification and it automatically adds a free X to your cart. There's some things that you could do with a little bit more mobile development versus your click SMS going to a website.
That totally makes sense. There's always going to be similarity between mobile messaging and notifications. Is email any different? Do you guys do different stuff with email compared to these channels?
Yeah, email is quite different. It's the cadence is a lot higher. There's a lot more content going into it. There's a lot more copywriting to go into it. So it's definitely a lot more of a deeper strategy compared to SMS or the app notifications.
Yeah, so maybe you can expand on some specific strategies or specific implementations you guys have done on the email.
In email, plain text emails are extremely underrated. So for the audience, in case you're not sure what a plain text email is, it picture a regular email written in just plain text form and not a designed email, like nothing, no responsive, no design elements. It's literally written an email like almost like a sales letter and an e-com, and depending on the client, these emails perform really well. Almost like a note from the founder or a message from the founder. It performs really well because it's super relatable. It looks like someone actually took the time to write on their keyboard and send you something versus a designed, almost looks like an advertisement or a newsletter. So plain text emails, which can be very long with a lot of different links. It's more of a sales letter. That's something that you just can't get across in SMS. People aren't reading long SMSs. They're not reading long push notifications, right? So these would be longer type emails that are really convincing someone to do something. In our case, we work with several online fitness influencers who sell workout programs. And that's really where we utilize plain text emails to hit that emotional trigger and essentially convince them to buy a workout program online. So that's something that you don't have that accessibility and the number of characters in SMS and an app compared to an email.
That totally makes sense. It's people texting, I want a short text, but for email, the form factor can be a lot longer. And then how do you decide what to send, right? You have maybe the messages, text messages, you have email. How do you decide like, which channel to send, when to send? Yeah, so kind of your strategy on that.
I think it varies a lot on the client and what they have going on, right? So it's all essentially based on key calendar dates and their schedule. When are they launching new things, right? Is Mother's Day coming up, right? So it's a lot around the calendar year. And in fashion, which is the space that we play most in, there's spring collections, fall collections, winter collections. So you really play around those main themes. And what we always say is like email is there almost every single time. So whether it's a new product dropping or Mother's Day is around the corner or X, Y, Z, email is usually there every single time as long as you're doing your segmenting right. And then your push notifications on SMS and app come along on the a little bit heavier dates. Hey, this is new is coming out, right? Hey, we've launched this. Whereas emails, hey, we launched this. And then in 2 days, it's like, hey, reminder, we launched this, right? 2 days later is, hey, this is your last call. Whereas SMS might just be like launch and last call and not necessarily a reminder in between.
That totally makes sense. It's no one wants to get some text from their brands. Emails, people are a little more responsive to a higher frequency there. I think one thing you mentioned was important, like the importance of segmenting and stuff like that. So what are some of the keys? Obviously, it's hard to generalize, but across the clients you've worked with, maybe some key patterns you've seen that are like useful ways of segmenting your clients that have driven conversion?
Yeah. So one of the most important segments to create would just be like your engaged, what I say engaged 365 would be your engaged audience in the last 365 days. And what is your engaged audience? It'd be anyone who signed up for your emails, anyone who came to your website, anyone who's interacted with your emails, right? So you really want to take a warm audience and communicate to those people. You can't always send to 365. So you really always break it down in between 14 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and 180, 365 and above from that. So it's super important that you're constantly split testing these different audiences and creating these different audiences based on the type of product or the type of business that you play in.
It totally makes sense. How engaged and how recently did they engage with your business? Definitely a good way to segment. I think just backtracking a little bit. So obviously you have to get people to give you their email. So obviously if you know they purchase, maybe you can get their email. But are there any kind of tips or tricks you've seen, maybe an offer or anything like that to first get people's emails in the first place?
Yeah, the number one way to grow, the fastest way to grow an email list is essentially by running a giveaway. So hosting a giveaway on your website. We love to use a company called Viral Sweep to host our giveaways because this allows you to create the extra entry points for having additional steps in a contest. And therefore, let's say we give away $1,000 giveaway, perhaps a gift card or shopping spree to our store, our client store. And you'd enter this contest. And if you share with a friend or if you follow the Instagram account, you're essentially gaining extra entries into the contest. You could also send referrals. So that is the fastest way to grow an email list is to essentially host a contest. You are trading an entry for their data, and that would be the fastest way to grow an email list, hands down.
That's a really good point with the viral sweep. It's not just like entering your email and that's it. It's also inviting your friends or doing stuff on social media. But that's really helpful. So I think just speaking of social media, other than ads, we'll talk about that shortly. Any kind of key frameworks, lessons from managing brand social media and how they should utilize it effectively?
Staying relevant. I'd say that's the biggest thing. Unless you're staying relevant and you have an engaged audience, doesn't matter what agency you hire, doesn't matter what ads you run, doesn't matter any of your other strategies. Unless you are staying relevant, providing value to your audience, whether that's education, knowledge, fun, or whatever that would be, fashion, staying relevant is the base, right? Like I would say, we're here to pour gas on the fire. If there's no fire, we can't see the day for you.
That totally makes sense, right? They have to have the base content and then maybe you guys can help amplify it and tweak it a little bit. But if they don't have that relevancy, then it's hard to do that. I have
Totally.
partnered with influencers with with your agency. I think you mentioned that. So how do you advise clients to structure dealings with influencers and find the right influencers for their brand?
Yeah, I think structuring something long term is super important. And it's never just, hey, one post, kind of like a one post or like a one night stand, right? Really figure out how to partner with the right people over a long period of time so that they are invested into the brand and they really do care for the brand long term and not in it for the short term deal. So structuring deals long term as well as a base plus incentive always so that they are incentivized to share a code, to drive traffic to your website and to get sales. So it's always a nice and healthy base so that everyone's happy in the partnership but with an incentive in order for them to perform and in order for them to really convince their audience that they stand by the product and that they should buy it too.
It totally makes sense. You don't want a kind of a one-off relationship. You want a longer-term relationship. And then there's many influencers, micro influencers. So how do you suggest a brand pick the right one to work with? Should they try a lot or do a lot of research? Like how should a brand find the right influencer?
Very manual. So I know there's a lot of tools available these days and things that would help you. But what we tell our team is to dive deep into the comments, right? Find the influencers, create a long list, and then really dig deep into their engagement. Of course, it's easy to say, hey, make sure they have a great engagement rate. That's standard. but really dive into the comments and see how people are interacting with that person. Is that influencer coming back and replying to majority of their comments and creating conversations? Do they have real fans? Are they really providing content and providing an experience to their followers that would then convince them to also follow your brand or to follow your product? So getting deep into the comments there is and analyzing the comments, what's going down in the comments is very important, and not just a lot of likes and a high engagement rate. And I think we can already throw a follower or someone out the door. I think that's gone these days, and it's not on followers. It's on engagement rate and the way that they built a community. And does that community stand behind the influencer?
That totally makes sense. It's not about how many followers or weak fans an influencer has, how like their top fans, how engaged they are, and a comment is a good heuristic for that. The next question I had was, I think you mentioned paid ads. So any kind of frameworks on paid ads, or some channels that you think are really reliable, and maybe some channels you think are maybe underexploited by brands.
Yeah, I think the bread and butter is, and we'll see if it will always be, it would be Facebook Ad Manager. That's the bread and butter. It had the most data. It's been along the longest. It's especially for a brand that's a little bit less on search, a little bit more on culture and lifestyle. It's mainly Facebook ads. And I'd say more brands that are a little bit more that brands that sell a product that has a use to it, meaning let's say a screen cleaner versus screen cleaner. An ad for screen cleaning may perform a lot better on TikTok than a ad for a nice sweater on TikTok. Versus a nice sweater might perform very well on Facebook and Instagram. What I'm trying to say is that lifestyle content and imagery of fashion forms really well on Facebook and Instagram, but those like gadget videos, those UGC style, almost think about like a well performing organic TikTok video. You turn that into an ad, that's going to do very well. You turn that organic asset into an ad, it's going to do very well on TikTok platform, but it might not do as well on Pinterest or might not do as well on Facebook. So really knowing which platforms to invest in is super important. I'd say one up and coming ad platform that is underexploited right now would be Instacart ads. And this is because the customer is already so deep into the customer journey. They're about to check out, right? Someone's coming on to Instacart, imagine like an Uber Eats, and then you're being upsold and recommended products. You're already about to buy lunch. You're already about to do your groceries versus when you're on Facebook, you're not about to buy a piece of clothing. You're just scrolling on your feed. So I really like Instacart ads, and they convert really well because they're so deep into that customer towards the end of the customer journey right before checkout. So Instacart ads perform really well. They're search intent, similar to Google. So if someone searches chips, you want to be in your chip brand, you want to be the first one to show up in the search results. So I'd say Instacart ads are extremely underexploited right now.
That totally makes sense. Facebook's really reliable, has a lot of reach, it's real a fine-tuned engine. TikTok having the right videos on that, and then Instacart, you're already about to buy, almost committed to buying. And so you're almost like just doing an upsell here. The ads and content will do great there. I think one platform you mentioned is Pinterest. Any kind of key types of content that do well on Pinterest?
Blogs, blog content leading to a website. So picture a checklist, a beauty checklist going into spring, 5 tips to clean your skin or to do your hair. Let's say, since Pinterest is predominantly women over the age of 28. So a lot of moms on there, and it's really a lot of content that would give ideas in terms of decorating, planning ahead. It's a very interesting platform to run ads on.
Makes sense. I'm definitely targeting the demographic and the type of content on Pinterest lists and stuff like that. Totally makes sense there. So we talked a lot about getting people to your site. Any kind of key lessons, like when you get to your site, how you should design this site to maximize conversion, maybe something people regularly get wrong, or things they should be doing that they're not.
One that I see people get really wrong is not having a call to action in the very first block of the website, right? You see a lot of headers or like banners where people put a video. right? So if you're on mobile and you load up the screen, all you're seeing is a video, right? A call to action within the fold is what I always say is super, super important to have, and it often gets overlooked. Product pages, I say, are a lot more undervalued, meaning a lot of people don't really take the time to optimize their product pages, and they really just care about the aesthetic of their homepage. A lot of the time, we run ads directly to product pages, not to the homepage, and people really click away from the homepage right away. So I think people are leaving a lot of a lot of money on the table by not optimizing their product pages.
That totally makes sense. You're there for people to buy, right? So you always want to have a call to action on the homepage, and it might be a lot of work, but you need to have great product pages because that's the end page where people are going to make the decision. Are there any kind of tools like, I don't know, Chat GPT or stuff like that kind of help you make some of this content for if you have a lot of SKUs, or any kind of tips here to manage, like if you have a lot of SKUs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think we're having lots of fun playing around with Chat GPT. We use it a lot more to source ideas and to create lists and more of a brainstorm. We do use it. Of course, we take the content, we alter it, and use it as best as we can. But we don't rely too heavy on it. I think it's still an evolving piece of technology. What we do still requires that very creative aspect, that cool factor is just something that AI also doesn't necessarily have. A lot of our clients are very in tap with the culture and being cool and going. AI is a little bit behind in terms of that. So we use it. We want to always know how to use it, but it's not something that we rely necessarily heavily on. We like to know what's going on and how to use it, and use it for brainstorming when we can, but it's not something that is in our day-to-day processes of ensuring that we run something through it beforehand or anything like that.
That totally makes sense. Maybe you'll just put a couple queries in and get some ideas that you can incorporate, but it's not like whatever ChatGPT says. That's what's
Correct.
going on
Exactly.
the website. I think thing you mentioned is you guys like try to be creative and try a bunch of is out there. Do you guys do a lot of A/B testing, or is there a lot of intuition, or how do you figure out what content to show on the site to maximize conversion?
The easiest way to first get a piece of creative is look at the organic page and essentially look at the Reels tab, look at the TikTok page, and look at the top performing videos that the client has used organically. And there's already some piece of data for you, right? You could already take the top 3 performing organic posts and use them as ads right away, right? In order to already get something delivering, in order to start testing something. But to this day, everything is different. Every single brand is different. Of course, you have to have a good hook. That's standard, right? But every single brand is different. They're selling something different, right? So it's like a unique strategy, a unique different tests every single time. But of course, the first 3 seconds, the hook is the most important across the board.
Totally makes sense. Maybe you can get some lessons from their organic content, and then also always having a good hook, no matter what. Wrapping up here, so I know Impulso has, I think, about 10 employees now. So what's the been journey been like growing the team? And then also, what is the long-term vision of Impulso? Like if everything goes great, where does Impulso in 5 years?
Yeah. It's been lots of fun building for about 2.5, 3 years. I definitely came from no agency experience. I only had brand experience. So it's been a lot of training for myself over this last 3 years in terms of all things to do with the business, from processes to hiring to regular workflow. Everything's a learning process. So it's been really fun and educational to build over the time and really figure out those systems and processes in place in order to build. And I'd say long term for Evolso is to work with international brands and really create international marketing campaigns, mostly focused in e-commerce. But I'd love to run into other opportunities where it's not just solely focused on a transaction online, but perhaps some bigger, more cross channel campaigns where it's also like billboards and activations. Whereas right now we're solely focused on e-commerce because that's where I came from. That's my space. That's where I know best. But as we level up the team and level up the network, really excited to be exposed to more opportunities across the whole marketing realm and not solely focused on e-commerce itself.
That totally makes sense. So landing bigger, more international clients and expanding the clientele, but then also not just being e-commerce, but expanding the range of your specialty to more like omni-channel types of experiences. And then final question, is there a brand or anything you bought recently that you're really impressed with or the overall shopping experience with?
A recent one is a workout fitness brand called ASRV. Once they're heavy on Facebook ads, but I think that their photography and their technical aspects of their marketing are really strong. They really go into the benefits and the material that they use. I think their overall organic strategy, as well as their paid strategy, is extremely strong. They're very relevant. They're very high tech. They're aesthetically pleasing, and they really do have a high performance product. They also have an app, so that was interesting to hang out in the app and then check them out. I believe their app's also built by Tapcart, so it was cool to
Okay.
see. So that's my recent purchase. That's what came to my mind. But I really like the overall aesthetic of the brand. It's really cool.
That's awesome. It's really cool to see how you guys use apps for your brands and then the brand you liked it has that app community factor there too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sun Mahal podcast. Please make sure to subscribe.